So how did this all come about? If I just put some context to the sequence of events. So you know that this happened in the early 90s. I was at school, long before I was ever involved in this. And basically, Eddie Maher was clearly the main suspect. And 3 or 4 other people were very quickly identified as being involved, which are named in the book. Paul Muggleton, Michael Solsh, and Terry Bender, I think was the other one. The decision was taken at the time by the SIO, the Senior Investigating Officer, that the others wouldn't be arrested until Eddie Maher was arrested. Okay, which at the time was probably the right decision. We'll get the main man, hopefully get the money, then we'll get the others. Because obviously they didn't know that we knew about the others, but clearly it was obvious that Eddie Maher had done it. And obviously time went on and on and on and on, and years go past, and like with companies, financial years generally run from April the 1st to 31st of March. Crime counting years run the same. The memories sort of started to fade, other jobs cropped up. Eddie Maher hadn't been arrested, and he never was arrested, and then the others weren't arrested, and the job kind of got parked and forgotten about almost. There was sightings at various places around the world, but they all came to dead ends, and it all sort of went, the SIO retired, the SIO died, it's just parked. So we then got to a point with the CPS to get an international arrest warrant. Now, when you've got one of them, you have to have enough evidence to charge somebody, okay? And if you've got enough evidence to charge somebody, you're not allowed to interview them further. So that's applicable to like somebody for shoplifting or a burglary. Once you've got enough evidence to charge, you must charge, or more importantly, you shouldn't interview further, okay? So we've got an international arrest warrant in place, which means there is enough evidence to charge, which means we can't interview him, okay? So wind the clock forward until he's discovered in America, and he's then shipped back to the UK, and then brought into custody and charged without being interviewed, okay? Because that's the rules. So we didn't know what he had to say about it, but more importantly, he didn't know what we had to say about it. So he didn't know what we knew. So he has then put forward his everyone thought he would plead guilty because it's obvious he's driven off with the money and buggered off to America, and it's obvious he's going to plead guilty to it, but he didn't. He pleaded not guilty. When you plead not guilty, you put forward your defence case statement, which is your reason why you're pleading not guilty. And he put forward the defence of duress, which is a statutory defence applicable to sort of pretty much all crime types. Yeah, I drove fast, but I was under duress. I was being forced to. I was forced into it, basically. So he put forward his defence case statement, which is quite lengthy, and I've got you an extract there. But of course, he didn't know what we knew. So some of what he wrote was really easily stood out that, well, we can prove that's a lie. So when he put forward his defence case statement, we were getting our paperwork tidied up, ready to, bringing it up to modern day standards for Crown Court to go and convict him. And suddenly this is put forward. And when he put forward his defence case statement, it was actually almost believable to a jury. Okay, it's really important when you look at a jury have to convict someone beyond all reasonable doubt. Okay, so I don't know whether you've ever sat in Crown Court and listened to evidence. It is fascinating, sometimes very boring, but fascinating. So if you've got a jury, you've got a story that far-fetched but potentially believable, and you're asking a jury to convict somebody beyond all reasonable doubt, and they often stand up and say, if you're not satisfied beyond all reasonable doubt, you have to find the person not guilty. So having read this defence case statement, the management and the CPS sort of like, actually there's a real good chance he could get off this, because a jury might not believe him fully, but they might not step over that threshold of beyond all reasonable doubt. So, at the risk of the reputation of the constabulary and of the CPS, having somebody who said, yeah, I drove off with £1 million and I took the money to America and I lived there for 20 years, I did it, and we don't end up convicting him, we'd look a bit silly, wouldn't we? So, I never knew anything about this case, because one, it was Felixstowe, so it was officers over this side of the county that were dealing with it. But I was called here and sat down with my bosses to say, right, we want you to read this defence case statement. So I read it and was like, okay, there's a chance he could get off here. And they said yes, and you're given the job of making sure he gets convicted, either to make him plead guilty or to be convicted by jury under trial. And actually I was sort of told, don't muck it up, basically. So I've been a detective inspector by that time for probably sort of 5 years, I suppose. I was able to pick my team pretty much, remove all my other workload, remove all my on-call commitments, because we cover the whole force as on-call, and concentrate on this. So what we did was sat down with my little team, we went through it all so that everyone knew what his story was, and then we reviewed the evidence that we had. We've got loads and loads of statements, all dog-eared and old faxes and you name it, and to try and pick out the evidence that would prove that what his story was saying was wrong. Okay, so very quickly, in amongst it was some quick wins. You know, some statement like he said that happened, and like 3 witnesses clearly saying it didn't happen, and all this sort of thing. So suddenly it was looking quite good. But then of course some of those witnesses had died, so it's really difficult to attribute that in evidence and be relied upon, because the first thing that his team would do is say, call that witness to court so that we can cross-examine them. And clearly we can't if they've died. So what I then uncovered was that when he'd been detained in America, he'd been interviewed by the FBI, because you've read the book as to how he's come about, and actually that's accurate. The book is accurate. You know, he was put under surveillance over there. They were watching him, and he was interviewed by the FBI, him and his wife. But we hadn't got those interview transcripts here, because we'd said, well, he'll plead guilty. It's just extra material, and we have to schedule it. Don't bother sending it from America, because it's just hassle that we don't need, frankly. So as soon as I realised this, and now we've got a man pleading not guilty, I spoke to the FBI and said, send them over. When we got the transcripts from the FBI, his story was that the duress story, and it had been given, I think he said £40,000. Again, this is where it gets different, because you know, he said 20,000. Anyway, I think he said he got given £40,000 and told to go to America and never come back, sort of thing. His wife said they got given $200,000, right? And they bought a house in Woodland Park, possibly on Leslie Circle. So I was like, oh, well, that's clearly very, very different. They didn't get their heads together. Bear in mind, they'd been arrested unexpectedly, nearly 20 years down the line, or certainly 19 years down the line. They'd probably forgotten what the story was, but either way, it was his wife, Debbie, who gave that bit of information. So, quickly got on Google, what is Woodland Park? Woodland Park is a town. What is Leslie Circle? Leslie Circle is a small cul-de-sac of about 6 houses, maybe 7 or 8 houses. Got hold of the police department at Woodland Park and said, right, a little bit of a strange one this, but you know, this is the story, can you help me out with just checking if any houses were bought or sold at around that time, in one of these names, so either Eddie Maher, Brett, you know, or Stephen King, or there's 2 or 3 others, and they came up trumps with that one, 1345 Leslie Circle, and that was bought for cash, $129,000, I think it was cash, and then that was that sort of kicked it off. So we then started exploring, like on land registry records over there, and they were sending me copies and signatures matched on things that were matched on what was in his pocket when he was arrested in the name of Stephen King. And suddenly it was actually looking quite interesting. Well, we need to evidence that. If we can evidence that purchase for cash, $129,000, we had to look at what the exchange rate was back then. You know, so what did £40,000 equate to that or not, which it didn't. So the Americans, obviously, this wasn't a priority for them because they've got daily business to sort out, and they were thinking, well, what's the rush? It's waited this long. We've got other jobs to do. We will get round to it. Now, the other thing I should have said was that I was also given a time limit of 10 weeks, approximately, because when you charge someone and remand them in custody, you only have so long before actually you have to release them on bail. So my bosses said, he's not to be released on bail. You need to get this done in 10 weeks. So it's a bit of a rush. So the stuff they got from America was really good, but the statements that they were providing weren't sort of up to UK standards, and wasn't any rush. So I said to my bosses, actually, we need to go to America, and we need to get this down in evidence. We need to evidence. So I worked out who they'd bought it from, who they'd sold it to, the estate agents they used. We've got the land registry details, all the rest of it. So we went to the people who I think they bought it from them. So they were in Denver, which is like about 100 miles away from there. So we got a statement from them. Me and Steve Bunn went over there. We got a statement from them saying, yeah, we bought this house. I think they bought it. I can't remember if they sold it to Maher or whether they bought it from Maher. I think they bought it from him. Either way, it doesn't matter. They remembered it because the name's Stephen King. Stephen King's an author. They were like, oh, that's a bit random, Stephen King's involved. It was cash. They looked at the pictures online, and they were like, yeah, that's the guy we sold it to. That's his wife. That's who it was. So we got their statement. Then we went to Woodland Park. We got the land registry details from a little town called Cripple Creek, which is quite a funny little name, but that's kind of like a bit like buying somewhere in Stowmarket and the offices are in Ipswich sort of thing. So they dug all the records out for there, and we went to the estate agents in Woodland Park, and fortunately they had kept 1993's records. All other years they'd ditched and disposed of, but they'd kept them as some sort of archive, and sure enough inside they'd got the record of when they sold it. So again, names, signatures, letters, new address, which was the ranch, and all this sort of thing. And then they'd actually got a list of gas, electric, water bills, January to December, to show how much the house had cost to run, which was all handwritten. And so we kept that because I said I'd like that, but it's probably been touched. And sure enough, Debbie Brett's fingerprint was on that paper, so that kind of was proved that bit. And then with the ranch house. Again, we sort of uncovered that while we were there, and did the same approach of the land purchase, and then you'd got the letters from him saying, addressed from 1345 Leslie Circle, saying this is my new address as of this date. And then we went at the people at Cripple Creek said, well, if you're buying somewhere there, there's no mains water, so you'd need to sink a well, and so if you go to the water board in Denver, so back up to Denver, they will have the records for the well application and the well sinking, which again costs money to drill a well. And sure enough, there's a nice handwritten letter from him. So we got that all evidenced. We went to see the people who live there, and they bought it from him and still live there. So again, they said, oh yeah, these are the people that we bought it from. They'd got all their original title deeds and everything with signatures, which they actually let us bring back to England in case we needed to fingerprint them. And again, got statements from them saying, this is us, we bought this house, this is what we paid. We recognise the pictures and all the rest of it. So what we then got was statements showing the purchase of this house in their names, then the purchase of the land for that, the 80 acres, at the same time as they owned the original house, so there's, not short of cash here. Then the sale of the house in Woodland Park, then the sinking of the well, and then the sale of that ranch to the people that still live there, Mr. and Mrs. Rose. So when you actually get all that together, all we wanted to do was to make him plead guilty. And so what we were saying was that actually you did get given a big load more than £40,000. You were able to buy a house and buy a load of land and get a prefab house built on there before that one was sold. This is someone who did have best part of $200,000. And if you think about it, most victims of crime don't get given money, do they?
No.
So when we then and getting American evidence into UK evidence is as simple as writing it on British statement paper. That's as simple as it is. So to convert the evidence, that's why it was important that we went, because we just wrote it on our paper and brought it back. That's our evidence. And if we wanted to produce witnesses, then we would get them to fly over. That was all part of it. So then we sent our evidence to to his solicitors, saying, right, having read your defence case statement, we've now got this further evidence. Now what happens? And then what happens is we got that letter, which you can have a copy of, which is from his solicitors saying that he wishes to change his plea guilty. So that's what happened. See?
Yeah, I read about that in the book.
Yeah. So it sounds simple, and I've said to people it might seem like obvious when somebody has driven off with all that money. It's obvious they were guilty, but actually when you read the defence case statement of duress, yeah, he could have got off with that. And I genuinely don't think he did get 1.2 million, because I think they shared it out. I think he got probably about 200 grand. But what's interesting, this new book that's come out, that's been advertised. I've read the synopsis online about it, and he's basically going back to his defence case statement story. That it was under duress. Well, he's already admitted in Crown Court that he wasn't under duress, that he did it. You see what I mean? So, but I guess it makes better reading, doesn't it? That it's the fictional story makes better reading. The fact of the matter is, it's just a thief that thought. And I also think he probably got the job at Securicor with the intention of doing that. That's what I think happened. If I'll never really know, but I reckon him and the others thought, who can get a job at Securicor out of our little group? You're the only one that's not got a sort of significant criminal record. And in fact, the references at Securicor were given by his sister, who said he's in a different name, who said he's an upstanding member of the community with no criminal records, and they took that as a reference. That's from his sister. So he got the job, then was able to work out how to do that theft, and then put it together and did the theft. So yeah, interesting really. Like in his new book, or online, he's saying that the getaway car was his Opel Ascona, and that then he was put into a people carrier and driven miles away into London. The people carrier was left in Felixstowe. So that's an untruth, isn't it? So he's just reverted to fiction because it's a better read. But anyway, have you got questions you wanted to ask me?
My first one is just want to start off, how are you doing?
How am I doing?
Yeah.
Fine, thanks. Got promoted, so I'm now Chief Inspector. Everything's fine in work, yes.
Yeah, I this linked to that question. I noticed that you've been promoted to Chief Inspector now. Did your work on the Maher case have any involvement in that? Not particularly. No, the promotion process is based on performance and evidence, and yeah, clearly that was a good and interesting job to work on, that we got a positive result, but actually didn't really have any direct influence on that. Yeah, because I'm not especially familiar with police, but
no. So quite the opposite, in fact, that I went for promotion after this job and didn't get it.
Oh.
But that's just the luck of the draw, really. So
it's interesting. Well, you mentioned this earlier, because I was going to ask, did you grow up in Suffolk? Are you from somewhere else?
No, from somewhere else, yeah.
Whereabouts? What county?
I wouldn't say that.
Oh,
there's a number of reasons why I wouldn't say that, but it's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, nice.
I didn't know that you weren't allowed to say that. What made you want to get into police work?
Well, There is a little bit of a story behind that. That I went to university because I wanted to do forestry, and after about 3 weeks decided to quit because I'd had enough of studying. I went back to my hometown, landed a little job in a stock room in a shop, got chatting to a lady whose son was a special constable, and it sounded quite fun at the time that my parents were quite disappointed with me for quitting university, so I thought I'd make them happy and become a special. So I joined the specials and then literally just thought, I love this is what I want to do. So applied for that force, was rejected, and then applied for Suffolk and was accepted. So I got into Suffolk and then moved to Suffolk.
Oh.
So never thought about being a cop, purely because I went to university and quit, that I got this job at Argos and that I wanted to please my parents as I joined as a special.
Oh.
There you go.
So it just happened like through coincidences, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're quite passionate about it now, I suspect.
Yeah, I was a special for 2 and a bit years before joining, and I've done 20 years in Suffolk this year, so sort of over 20 years I've been policing.
20 years, what month?
September.
Oh, I was born October, I'm going to be 20 in October, so...
Okay, so I started here just before you were born.
Yeah, a month before I was born.
Sound really old, don't I? Yeah.
No, I'm just really young, to be honest, but... yeah, so you are around the same age as my parents, so... Yeah. Let's see... What are the biggest profile cases you've worked on as part of the Suffolk Police?
Probably is this one, but I have worked on other cases. That there was quite an interesting attempted murder that I worked on in Bury St Edmunds. There's been quite a few. Just have to Google them. ATM robbers. Yeah, there's been quite a few.
Oh.
But this is the one that's had the most attention, albeit it's not the one that's got the biggest sentence in prison or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm guessing you weren't really used to being so much in the media or press.
Well, as a detective, you're often used to do media appeals and such like. So, as a detective constable or sergeant, not so much, but once you get to inspector rank, that's often we're called on to go into the media. So, quite a lot of just from the level of like local papers, local radio, that sort of thing. But then, I've been interviewed for like BBC Suffolk, and then I've had friends text me and say, "Oh, I saw you on, or heard you on like Radio 2, Radio 1," because it's just the sound bites, they're just broadcast nationally. I also worked on there was a nightclub shooting in amongst the ladies that got murdered by Steve Wright. There was 4 people shot and killed in one was killed in a nightclub in Ipswich. At the same time, Zest nightclub, and I was a detective constable then, and I was worked on that job, and that was a very interesting job to work on. But I was just a DC then, so that was quite an interesting job. But yeah, there we go.
I don't think I knew about that because I think I was like 9 then, so I wouldn't really have been.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was actually seconded to the Metropolitan Police to work with the Counter-Terrorism Command at that time. There was a plot to bring down a load of planes over international waters, which was foiled, and I was seconded down to the Met to work on that job, which was very interesting to work on. And then the murder started happening in Suffolk, and then the nightclub shooting happened, so they said, right, we need all our staff back in Suffolk to work on that. So that's how I came back to work on that one.
I was like, everything started happening at once in Suffolk
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
Because obviously, I'm guessing the Steve Wright murders overshadowed that a bit.
Yeah, and I didn't work on that job, but so we worked on this other murder, which was very interesting, but almost quite good that there wasn't the media interest in it particularly, because it just meant we could just crack on and deal with it.
Because the media have a tendency to publicise those sorts of things quite
So yeah, you asked cases of interest I worked on, but as a DC, probably that nightclub shooting was interesting. The counter-terrorism job was very interesting. But jobs that I've actually been able to run as a leader, this is probably the most. Well, it is the most one that's been in the media.
Well, I suspect it was quite fun to go to America and act out all those old police serials.
Yeah, it was. It was interesting. It was busy. We were only there a week, and we worked long hours. I know everyone might think, "Oh, I had a right laugh." We worked long hours because we only had a week to do it in, and every time we uncovered something new, it was like, "Well, we better get in the car and go," and go and get the statements and see people. It was a long week, lots of hours. Yeah.
Hold on, I just want to make sure the focus is. Let's see. How long has it been since you last talked about the Eddie Maher case in an interview, or just in general?
Quite a long time really. After he was convicted, we then seized his pension money. So again, you probably read it in the book. He was a firefighter. He was being paid a pension of about £600 a month. When he went to America, his account got closed. He closed his account. So the fire service still had £600 a month of his money, which got together in a pot of about, I think, £120,000. So when he came back to the UK, he made an application and said, "Well, can I have all my money now, please?" So without boring you about legislation, if something happens now, if this happened now, he'd get what's called a POCA award against him, if you like, a Proceeds of Crime Act. So what it means is he'd say, right, you stole £1.2 million, you've now got nothing. If you ever come into any money above 500 quid, we can seize it. Okay, so it's really to prevent, 5 years' time, someone digging up the money and buying themselves a mansion. We'd then get that mansion under POCA. Okay. Although he was dealt with in recent times, they argued that his financial aspect should be dealt with under old legislation, which is the Criminal Justice Act legislation. So what that meant was we could only seize what he had then. And if he wins the lottery or anything that sells a book, that's his money now. And indeed, so his pension was the only asset he had. This £120,000 was his only asset. So we had a Criminal Justice Act hearing, and that was seized from him. However, £600 a month he's still getting, or whatever it is now, he's still getting that, and will get that indefinitely. And we can't seize that. But we would be able to seize it under POCA, but we can't seize it now. So, to answer your question, that hearing about his pension happened some time after he was convicted, several months after. Again, there was a bit of a media interest around that, and then that was kind of closed the book on it really. That was never really talked about it, because it was job done,
Oh, because have you talked? I'm guessing you've talked about his new book recently.
Yeah.
So, I think you were Did you talk to Colin Edmund about that? Well, he sent you an email or something about it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Did you know about the article beforehand?
No, I didn't. I didn't know about it.
What were your thoughts on it when you read it?
I mean, I thought it was no surprise that at some point, because he talked about the fact that he would, do a film or a book or something, and so it was no surprise that it was going to come at some point. But when I read the synopsis online, the sort of summary of the story, it was just like, yes, it's all lies really, because you're just talking about what your defence case statement was, and actually we disproved most of that, but it makes for better reading, doesn't it?
Will you be getting the book then, or?
I think I will probably borrow a book from my library, but out of principle I won't buy one.
Yeah.
Just because the profit will be going to his pocket. So just out of principle I won't, but who knows? Maybe I'll get on for Christmas.
It might be good speculative fiction for you to look through.
Yeah, maybe he's took a leaf out of Stephen King's book and writing his own fiction story. So, yes.
The new Stephen King.
Yeah, indeed.
Did you give the investigation any personal nicknames, like apart from Operation Ramble, or did you give the case any nicknames or anything like that?
No, it was just Operation Ramble. It was just a randomly assigned name. We have an operation name generator system, believe it or not, that's kind of done alphabetically, and it's just chosen. Yeah, Ramble's fine. So they're kind of, the names are chosen just to be innocuous, so that it's not, I don't know, like Operation Lock Him Up or something like that. It's just Ramble. No, we didn't really. No nicknames. Just Operation Ramble.
Well, so you didn't call it like the Fast Eddie case or anything?
No, we didn't. I mean, the the name Fast Eddie was coined by the media at the time because he got away really quickly and gone. That was. But no, we just called it the Operation Ramble.
So it is like one of those random name generators.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's like, so it's not indicative of what the case is about.
No, indeed, and if you think about it, if we'd said, if we were targeting you and we called it Operation Hogger, actually, if anyone talking about Operation Hogger, you might think, oh, that's probably about me, and if somebody got wind of it, so it's just so that you could never work out what it is. Occasionally we do a name of, like knife crime, Operation Blade or something like that, but more, if it's not required for that, it's just completely random.
Yeah, more of a general term.
There's some really weird names that they come up with as well. So.
What are the weirdest names that you've heard of operations?
I don't know. There's just loads. Just random words. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that actually. Yeah. It's quite funny. Do you believe a crime is much more substantial when there's violence involved, or do you think both non-violent crimes and violent crimes can be as bad as each other, depending on the circumstances?
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that. Depend on the circumstances, because if you think a burglary, so somebody goes out for the day, comes home from work, and the house has been burgled, no violence, but actually their privacy has been violated. That does have a really bad effect on victims. Or something really, really precious to them has been stolen, that's can have a really bad effect. Clearly, violence offences can have a lasting effect, permanent injuries. I've got scars on my face as a result of fights I've had and attacks I've had at work. As permanent reminders, and so they can have quite a negative effect. So it depends on the case, doesn't it? And someone's often said to me, well, what's the difference between having your car broken into and your house broken into? Your house is your castle, isn't it? It's just your place of safety, so it can have a really negative effect. So it depends what it is. I'm not saying one is, clearly violent crimes are bad, but non-violent crimes can be just as bad. Frauds. Someone has a bank account emptied. The effect, particularly like elderly people being targeted by people harassing them and committing frauds against them, that has such a devastating effect on people that actually is almost worse than violence.
Yeah, it's the mental effect as well.
Absolutely.
I know a woman who's a close friend of my dad's for like 30 years or so, and she's recently had something happen to her, and it's to do with money, and I know that's been horrible on her, even though nothing violence happened. Yeah. It's still quite devastating.
So, I mean, with this case, there was no violence, which is why it wasn't a robbery, because robbery is basically a theft with violence. So this was always ever only going to be a theft offence. And a lot of people at the time said, well, there was no, it was stolen from a big firm, there's no victim, sort of praising him almost. Well, actually, it's still a big crime, isn't it? There was no violence.
but like Peter Bunn, who was the other guard with him, you know, he was grilled and put through the mill because there was a suspicion that he might have been involved. You know, so no violence, but it clearly had an effect on him at the time. You know, so there is wider impact, really.
Yeah, I read he was interviewed for like something ridiculous, like 7-9 hours straight or something like that, which is bonkers, really.
But when hindsight's brilliant, but when you don't know what's going on, you know, on the face of it, there's two guards. Did they talk? Did he drive off with the money and he's the innocent one? That's the story. And at some point, 3 weeks down the line, he's going to get a load of money. You just don't know. As it turns out, Peter Bunn was completely innocent, you know. But at the time, we didn't know.
You have to go through all the possibilities, because otherwise you could.
And I don't know this, but I imagine he was probably put under surveillance. I imagine, just because keep him in custody long enough, get a surveillance team together. When he's released from custody, follow him and see what happens. I don't know whether that happened or not. It might have done.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be
probably
surprising.
What I'd do if it was my job now. That's what I'd have done. It's because you just don't know whether he's innocent or not, you know. But there you go.
Because it could have been like a double con or other.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be out of the blue for them to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, let's see. What did you think of the public opinion surrounding Maher before? Well, you didn't really know about Maher while it was happening, but after and while you were investigating him, did you agree with any of it? Did you hate any specific parts of it?
I didn't really get embroiled in the public opinion. You know, that once the press are kind of bound by reporting rules. So once he, you know, I think in the paper that he'd been found, brought back to England, charged and put in prison, they weren't ever going to really comment on anything in the media until such time as, you know, it's in court. So there wasn't, by the time I got put on the job, there wasn't really a lot of stuff in the media because they're not allowed to report on it or promote it. And I said, some people thought, yeah, fair play to him, you know, got away with a load of money, good on you sort of thing, no violence. Other people just, like me, well, it's criminal, it's a crook, so, you know, why should someone do that? Interestingly, after his sentence, a lot of people thought, well, that was worth it, you know, to nickel that money and only get a really small sentence. Is it worth it? I don't know, I don't think so.
And those people don't really know the full story about how he sort of went bankrupt and everything.
Yeah. I mean, he just kept downsizing in America. You know, so like the Woodland Park house he bought for, I can't remember what the figures were, but let's say it was $129,995, I think it was. And then he sold it for a little bit more, sold for about $135 from memory. So, you know, a few $1,000s extra, but not a load, and then bought somewhere smaller and put some money into that and sold that for a profit, and then bought somewhere smaller. Eventually, you know, still got to live, you know, and he was taking flying lessons and stuff like that and buying expensive furniture. Runs out. It's rubbish for money.
Yeah.
You know, so it did run out.
Yeah, people quite romanticise it or think he has a more glamorous lifestyle than he has really.
No.
He's had. People were like, when people didn't know what had happened to him, they were like expecting he was on an island somewhere sipping cocktails.
Yeah, no.
No. Is it hard to remain unbiased when you're investigating such a high-profile case that's in a lot of speculation and romanticisation?
Hard to remain unbiased. Not. Depends what your bias is, doesn't it, really? You know, I mean, if I had got a bias, it's that he's guilty. I need to prove that. But our training, that's our workshops, by the way, testing the sirens, I think it works. You know, our training as a detective, so I've had, you know, time as a DC, a DS, DI, do courses, you know, have to take exams. You have to investigate impartially and look at evidence along the way, both sides. So actually, whilst clearly my direction was, yeah, you need to convict this bloke because he's guilty, we have to look at the wider evidence. And that's just kind of instilled in us, really, that you can't just you can't remain focused, you can't have a single strand approach to an investigation. You have to look at whether somebody could be innocent, that proves they're innocent, or if they're guilty and what can prove they're guilty. But part of an investigative approach is to kind of preempt what someone might say to make them innocent and try and address that and close down that defence. So that part of it is almost thinking, well, if I was that criminal, how would I be trying to get away with it? And then trying to address that how with evidence, so that if they then come up with that idea, we can say, well, no, because we've got proof that didn't happen. See what I mean? So it's just about shutting down lines of defence, and that's why murder cases typically that often are really straightforward in the public eyes. Well, that person shot that person and killed them. We have to do really detailed investigations to shut down all avenues of defence: self-defence, duress, historical, mitigation. So when they stand in court, say, the only reason I killed him was because he, kicked the crap out of my wife, for example. You almost need to prove that didn't happen. There was no assaults. Do you see what I mean? So actually, you do have to look really wide, but clearly the focus is about getting justice and convicting a person.
So you sort of have to have an open mind to be a police officer, or
You
investigating officer.
Yeah, you do. You have got to have an open mind, and things come out of left field, and like, for example, the stuff I mentioned earlier about from the FBI. The simple approach is don't bother sending it, because it's extra paperwork for us, and he's going to plead guilty. But my approach was, well, what was said? Let's see what was said, and indeed that unlocked it for us, really. So yeah, open mind.
Oh God, I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, so really, there's not as big as a wider gap between the police and the media as you'd think, because both look for the truth in some parts, but they're quite investigative, and some of them are quite open-minded.
I think we have a good relationship with the media, particularly locally, because actually, if you look at the news, if you watch Look East and you watch Anglia, virtually every article or every other article has something to do with the emergency services. There was a fire here, there was a car crash here, something. So we really feed the media. That we have to have a good relationship, because if we didn't, we just wouldn't talk to them, and then they wouldn't have a news channel to broadcast, would they? Similarly, when we need the public's help, we approach the media and do witness appeals. If I was dealing with a job and I said I need to get on telly and appeal to the public, I guarantee they'd turn up and film me and do it for us, because they've got that good relationship. That's really important both ways. They get their news, we get our appeals. We get the opportunity to promote our good work when we convict people, for example. But also, it's only right that the media hold us to account if we haven't done a good job. And that's when the interest comes with how the media report on stuff, because you can be painted in a really bad light. So it depends what it is. I think local media have a similar approach. A lot of the journalists live locally, passionate about Suffolk, Norfolk, and want the safest county to live in, and most of them have children to bring children up in. National media is slightly different. Martin Brant, who's the Sky News reporter. I'm going to shut that window because that's just knocking me away. He's quite a well-renowned Sky News reporter, and I don't watch Sky, so I've not known about him.
I haven't watched Sky in a while.
And I'm sure it's Martin Brant. Anyway, when he was sentenced in Crown Court, he wanted to speak to me, and so the message came through, right, he's sitting in Crown Court. So I went in to all these journalists and said, is one of you Martin Brant? And of course all the journalists was like, God, how do you not know this man is Martin Brant? He was like, yeah, I am. which I sort of think annoyed him a little bit because he obviously thinks he's quite famous, and I'd genuinely never seen it before. And so then when he's reported it, and that is on YouTube, he actually sort of said, you know, it wasn't really the police that actually caught him. You know, it was, you know, although the police say they always keep looking and they always get their man, it was really his, you know, Eddie Maher's daughter-in-law that solved the case for him. So I was a little bit slated from that point of view, perhaps because of what had happened in court when I just said, "Oh, it's one of you mine, bro." But there you go. So it's funny how it works.
First impressions and all that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So would you classify it as like a mutually beneficial relationship then, or?
Yeah, there definitely are. With the media and police, there's definitely mutual benefits, and like with the press briefing document that I've given you, you know, everyone, all the press people signed up an agreement that they wouldn't release it before court, so there's that trust issue, and then they were all invited in and we did a press briefing, so there's that trust that they know that if they did breach it, they'd never get invited again. Do you see what I mean? So there is a mutual story, so they've got their story and we've been able to promote what we've done. So yeah, but equally there is absolutely confidentiality issues that I would never tell the media. Certainly not in advance. There's jobs that I'm working on I wouldn't tell the media today, you know, because of they don't need to know there's confidentiality, so they understand that and respect that as well.
No, 1 second, just making sure it is focused. Let's see, what's the next one? What are your thoughts on the expectations versus reality of crimes that involve theft of money, like heists and such? Do you think they're romanticised too often in the media, or like in film shows? Or do you think it's just harmless entertainment?
Don't know really. It depends if it's based on truth or not, isn't it? I think lots of people, probably the majority of people, want more money than they've got. I do. You know, most people do. And I think, you know, the fact that so many people play the lottery is an indication of that if I could just win that money, you know. So then people turn to crime and then look at the most straightforward way of doing it. It is romanticised, isn't it? You know, people end up getting rich and yeah, but the reality is crime is dirty, and particularly with poker, actually there isn't any long-term benefit. The second you get caught, then actually the law comes down, doesn't it? But without a doubt, some people have benefited from this job. No doubt about it. No two ways about it.
Yeah, because there was a film released. Well, it was like last week or something, or 2 weeks ago. It was called Hatton Garden Job.
Right. Yeah, I've not seen it. So yeah, that's the one where they drilled into the safes in Hatton Garden. Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite popular heists in films and shows and everything.
Yeah.
Really, I didn't know what you thought of.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I like watching things like that. You know, I do think it's you know, I enjoy watching it, but I also really enjoy reality. You know, I haven't seen that, but I will probably enjoy watching that.
Yeah.
But I also watch it with a sort of critical police eye. You know, and thinking, right, well, yeah, how did that happen? What mistakes were made, and could that happen again? And you know, what if that was given to me to investigate? How would I investigate it? Yeah.
Do you often find yourself like your job sort of affecting how you watch certain kinds of programs, or like if you're watching like Orange is the New Black, you like thinking about police related?
Orange is the New Black?
Yeah.
Never seen it. Don't know what it is.
Oh, it's a really popular Netflix show about a women's prison. So.
Oh, no, never watched it. Yeah, I suppose that, you know, you watch things and think, yeah, no, or you know, oh, that wouldn't happen in reality, or that, yeah. But
Some TV's really good.
Yeah, I'm guessing you think, like, because sometimes they have, like, police people giving advice who are officers or whatever, and they can make it accurate.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Oh, this is sort of related to the question. Are there any heist films you really like, but you can't really identify with the main characters as such due to your role as an officer of the law, or do you tend to divorce yourself from your work or personal life when consuming entertainment, like shows and films?
I don't know really. I suppose watching a bit of telly's a bit of a release from normal life, isn't it really? But it frustrates me sometimes when police are portrayed in a bad light, because that just does damage our reputation. It sometimes frustrates me when investigative approaches are illustrated in films that are just so wrong, because people then watch those films and expect us to be able to do the same, you know. And I remember watching years ago on the bill, and it got a blurred CCTV image of somebody, completely blurred, and they took it into their enhancement suite and made it crystal clear. Like, there's your suspect. Now, you just can't do it, you know, and you can't do it yet. I'm not saying we never will be able to, and you certainly couldn't do it back then. But you think, actually, you can't do that. So then we get people saying, well, we've got this blurry CCTV image, we've seen it on the bill, you must be able to do it. You just can't. You can make a crystal clear image blurry,
Yeah.
but if you're only given a blurry image, it's really hard to do anything with. Hence why we put so much CCTV in the media that's rubbish, you know.
There's I remember there was like a popular YouTube video. It was like enhance, and it showed like all CSI. When they go like enhance the image, and they go zoom in on the image, and it gets clearer. So yeah.
So that frustrates me when people say, why does it take so long? You know, on telly it only takes half an hour to solve a crime, and you think, well, you know, it's a slow process. You know, we have a lot of paperwork, a lot of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
You know, we can't just do things without authorities, you know.
Yeah, it's like, have you seen Hot Fuzz before?
Yes.
It's like all that paperwork, they take it and use it in a quite a funny light where they do like the action montage of all the paperwork. So
No, I quite there's aspects of Hot Fuzz I quite like. Yeah.
Did you find it accurate at all to the way a police station works?
So, yeah, it's bits of it. Yeah. Not a lot. It is a film, and it's funny.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. This it gets quite hot when you record for too long, so I might just run it. 55 degrees. Yeah, it's very hot. Next page. Let's see. This was sort of related to what we were talking about at the start. What were your feelings when you found out that Maher had pled not guilty in 2012, and when it began to look as if you might not convict him? It must have been tough to have had your solid case crumble so quickly like that. Oh, it's...
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier, the sequence of events was... I wasn't the one who had that crumbling effect, because when it was given to me, it was just a case of, this is the issue, and you need to deal with it and prove him wrong, really, and convict him. So, you know, don't get me wrong, I have had cases over the years where you think everything's going fine and things start falling apart, you know, mistakes start being uncovered or whatever, and that's why it's really important to get administratively really accurate throughout, so that we can't have any holes picked in an inquiry. But with this one, I didn't get that crumbling effect, because it had already been that kind of, yeah, we've got him, yeah, he's going to plead guilty, oh, he's pleading not guilty, oh dear, that defence case statement that's now looking quite bad. And then meetings with CPS and our senior management sort of said, you know, you really need to put some effort into this, else he's going to get off, and then there'll be furore in the press, won't there, as to how he's managed to get away with it.
So that crumbling effect wasn't for me. Mine was really positive, in fact, because I got the defence case statement and then got all the evidence and then started to disprove it. It was so quite the opposite. It was quite an uplifting feeling, really.
Yeah, because obviously that was before I'd talked to you, so I just got that sort of impression from the book. So it's interesting to actually hear your side.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have a different view on that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is about America. Had you ever been to America before going during
Yeah.
the Maher investigation, and what were your initial worries and concerns before flying out there to gather evidence?
Didn't really have any worries, really. I think part of the worry was, would we be able to get stuff done in time? The Americans were quite worried about us, bizarrely, because obviously we've got no powers over there. Certainly got no guns, no weapons, and they just couldn't believe that we're police officers walking around with no guns. And they're just like, well, we'll escort you with some guns. Why do you need guns? Just, we're talking to witnesses. We weren't looking at arresting anyone. But we had to write and get permission from the local police chiefs that they'd be happy for us to operate in their jurisdiction, and so we had to write that, and we had to get visas to operate out there. So that, actually getting that done, trip to London and getting everything stamped up, and rather than posting stuff, literally taking it from building to building so that we could go, because we literally, from the point of saying we need to go to America, we were going like about 8 days later. So we had to get all of our itinerary sorted, get permission from local police, Denver police and Woodland Park police, get the visas sorted. It was just that was a worry that we wouldn't be able to go, and we nearly missed the flight. Because when we went, there was a load of snow in England, and we don't deal with snow very well, so lots of flights were cancelled. And when we were going through the airport, my bag, I'd left a can of drink in it that shouldn't have been in it, so that got security checked, which meant literally we were about the last people on the plane. We had to leg it through the airport, go through the gate and get on the plane, and we just thought, oh my god, if we'd have missed this plane, I'd have been in so much trouble. It had been one thing for the plane to be cancelled because of snow. Ours was one of the ones that was going. We'd have just been in a whole world of crap with the bosses, because you left a can of drink in your hand luggage, Dave, you idiot. But there you go.
It must have been quite ironic as police to get sort of searched by security check and
we're just a couple of normal blokes that we're going through. Yeah, we didn't get any preferential treatment. We did the other end, because we'd got visas, so actually we got off at Denver and got the other end, and got a hire car and stuff. So yeah.
So continuing what you said, did you notice any big differences between the way the American police work versus the English police?
Yeah, we are loads better. Genuinely, their kind of standards, they couldn't believe how thorough we were being, because their sort of approach is, well, in this case, well, he drove off the money, he's guilty, that's it. They'd have just locked him up. Whereas, they couldn't believe how much detail we were going into about the house, the properties, the signatures, all that. They just could not genuinely get why we were bothering, because it was obvious. And it is obvious, but I think that's their standard of proof. If it's obvious to everyone, then that's good enough. Whereas in our country, beyond all reasonable doubt is the standard. So that was the big difference. They genuinely could not see why we were bothering to go into so much detail, but we did.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that he had done it. So you didn't if there was that 1% chance that it was different. Wanted to make sure that you.
I mean, we were everything was lined up. We were going to have 2 days off over there because we'd worked quite a few days leading up and then had a solid week. We were going to have 2 days off, but because we uncovered this stuff about the ranch, I said, well, we've just got to do it. We've only got one hit at this, so we didn't have days off.
Oh.
But never mind. It doesn't matter.
What parts of America did you go to?
It was Colorado where we were.
You just went to Colorado?
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't go to like Massachusetts or
No.
anything?
No, because again, and people have struggled to get their heads around this, that we weren't reinvestigating this whole case. We were just getting him to plead guilty to it. So there was only some aspects that we needed to look at, and so we just needed to get that catalyst for him to plead guilty.
So, well, did you see anything of particular interest while you were at Colorado outside of the case?
Yes. We, on the first morning that we were in Woodland Park, it was the equivalent of a bank holiday. I think it was like President's Inauguration Day or something. And because our body clocks were all over the place, we were up like really early when everyone else was sort of having a lay-in because it was a national holiday. So we drove, this was the only bit of leisure we did. We drove to the top of Pikes Peak, which is right next door to Woodland Park, and it's a massive, in fact it's in the background to the pictures, but you can drive to it, you can drive up it, there's a shop at the top, you can get a train up it, you can drive up it, and so we drove to the top of Pikes Peak, which is really good. You can literally see for just, I don't know how far you can see, probably 80, 100 miles maybe. It's so amazing. It's one of the best things I've done ever. It cost $10 and we drove up there, and thanks very much. That was the only bit of leisure we had, and so that was quite interesting.
Did you take any photos or anything?
Yeah, so that was Pikes Peak. It's quite a famous place. But it's really, Woodland Park is really high up anyway. Like Woodland Park, altitude wise, is higher than the highest mountain in England, and that's just the town. So actually the atmosphere is really, really dry, and you sort of get a bit of altitude sickness. So Pikes Peak's really high and actually really thin air, so actually it's quite hard to breathe at the top. They've got oxygen tanks in the shop and stuff like that.
God.
Yeah, so it's really, it's really high up. So, but you can imagine the view, and it was a clear day, just amazing. But that was a good thing.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to America. So.
I'll show you a picture of Pikes Peak there. So that's Pikes Peak in the background.
Oh.
You can see how flat this is, so you can imagine it actually. You can see like almost to Texas, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice that this area is very flat. Because Suffolk isn't exactly a flat area. Well, where I live is in between two hills. So.
Yeah. So, any others?
Yes.
Lots.
Let's find my place. I think I'll start this again. Were you surprised to hear about the lifestyle Maher was living, or how he had run out of money so quickly?
Yes and no. I mean, I think he wasn't, we delved into his history a bit, and he was never somebody who was outstanding with money, and it sort of came as a little surprise that it ended up all going, I genuinely believe they spent all the money. They went bankrupt. I genuinely believe that. No, not surprised really. Not surprised that they had a nice house to start with, and then it all sort of went wrong. But yeah, I think it's just that's crime doesn't pay, does it? And they've ended up in a bit of a pickle. They've got no particular money now. They've got no assets now. They've got grandchildren in America they're not going to see, that sort of thing. So actually it's not worked out great really.
Let's see. We talked about this at the beginning. When you found out Maher was using the alias Stephen King, what did you think of that? I personally thought it was quite funny as a fan of Stephen King's.
You know what? This is how uncultured I am. I'd never heard of Stephen King. I'm not a fan of fiction particularly. I think maybe I'd heard of Stephen King, but I didn't. It didn't really twig with me, if I'm honest with you. For quite a while, and the we found the real Stephen King, who gave him the false passport. And this is where the context of Jessica King, which is Jessica who was on Daybreak, the surname that she has and how that came about. So, obviously, Eddie Maher's done the job. They need to get a false passport. So what they've done, they've found this guy, Stephen King, who's just an unemployed alcoholic in London, and give him £100 or whatever to say, right, we'll use your details. Fill out the passport application, got it signed up, then swapped pictures for Eddie Maher, sent it off to the passport agency, then it's delivered back to Stephen King's house, and then the criminals collect it from Stephen King, give him £100, and there he's got Stephen King. That's how he's got his false passport. Okay. So then they've gone to America, and little Lee that he was, his son Lee Maher, is then named Lee King. He's married Jessica King, and they've got their son. I can't remember the son's name. So Jessica King has got the name from marriage that's from a London drunk. It's pretty sad, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I can't remember. Someone, I think one of Lee's exes had the name King like tattooed on her wrist or something.
Probably, yeah.
So
so that's, you think, well, that's just, the name Stephen King, it wasn't picked because it was an author, it was picked because actually that bloke's called Stephen King and we know him and we've bunged him £100 and he's let us use his name. That's the fact of the matter. So it's a real rubbish bit of story, isn't it, really?
I just thought it's quite funny because of all the people you could pick, you pick the guy that has the same name as this famous author.
Yeah, and again, maybe they didn't know. I didn't know.
Oh, I'm surprised you hadn't heard of him because Stephen King, like Shining, It.
Yeah, I'm not a fan
Carrie.
not a fan of fiction. I've led a sheltered life, so.
Stanley Kubrick. Shining.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Stephen King novel being adapted this year called Dark Tower with Idris Elba. I don't know if you know him. It's like a proper Hollywood film. It's coming out this year. It's like a young adult book series. Anyway, Idris Elba is from Luther.
Yeah, I know the actress. Yeah.
Yeah, he's starring in it.
Right.
But anyway, how much of a share did you originally think Maher had taken from a 1.17 million theft? Do you still have doubts about the 200,000 sum given by Debbie as the amount taken?
Well, I mean, she said $200,000, and she was specific with that. However, I also think after 19 years of living in America and dealing with dollars, she just probably said dollars in an interview, and it probably was £200,000. I genuinely think it probably was about that, because 4 or 5 of them involved. I think that was his share. No, that's probably about the only thing that is accurate. I think in the book he said he's got given £120,000 or something. I think he got more than that. I think he probably got about 200, but it's academic, really. Maybe he did get 10%. But, as I said, he's the only criminal I ever know who's been given, or the only victim, if you like, because he was a victim. He says he was a victim. He's the only victim who's ever been given money. Doesn't happen, does it? You don't rob people in the street and give them some money. You just take it because you're a robber. He's a thief, so he's took it. But, yeah. No, so to answer your question, Holly, I think, probably about a fifth maybe. And that was always the thought, because they knew that other people were involved.
So, you think that Debbie, the sum she gave was quite accurate?
Yeah, probably.
When did you first hear about the Eddie Maher theft? What were your initial thoughts about it?
I did hear about it just in the news, although I think an email came out or something at work, but it meant nothing to me because I didn't work in Felixstowe, worked in Bury St Edmunds. I'm not from Suffolk, I'd never heard of it before.
and I just almost disregarded it as it's nothing to do with me. It's not my job, so I'm not that interested. And it was literally when I was sat down with my DCI, my detective superintendent, and they said, we want you to take on the Eddie Maher case. And I said, who? I'd not even heard of it, genuinely. So, yeah, that's how exciting it was.
So you'd sort of forgotten about it, really. Like,
Yeah, just Eddie Maher was a nothing. It was a nothing job to me. You know, like I said, I'd never heard of it.
I don't know. Obviously, I don't know where you're from, but obviously it's quite a big case here because there's not really that many thefts, big scale thefts here compared to, say, London, where there's like that Hatton Garden heist, which was massive.
Yeah.
I don't know how much it was, 45
but
million. Or
also, if you think when this happened, I was doing my GCSEs.
Yeah.
I had no intention of being a police officer. I wasn't particularly interested in crime, so it was never. It certainly wasn't ever going to be of interest to me as a kid. You know.
Yeah. Obviously, if you were living here, you would probably have been slightly interested in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably never even heard of it because it didn't really affect you.
No, exactly.
So, but because I said my parents are probably around the same age, maybe a bit older, because I think they were like, this was 1993. So, well, actually, I think they were the same age because my mum was 17, I think. But yeah, my mum was from Felixstowe, so she had had more personal experience with it. So, yeah, I suspect that if you'd have been from Felixstowe, you would have had a similar thoughts about it. So, it's quite interesting that you're both similar but from different places. So, anyway, do you personally believe the media had any effect on the result of the case? On a larger level, do you think the media has an impact on many, if not all, cases that you work on?
That's a good question. I don't think it had an influence on this case. I think sometimes high-profile cases, despite judges being really articulate and ruthless and saying, you know, this is sentencing guidelines, the high profileness has nothing to do with the sentence being passed. Quite often you get appeals against sentence, don't you? You know, people say, well, you only gave them that because it was in the press and everyone, you know, there was public uproar and we appeal against sentence and it gets reduced by a couple of years. I think because this was only ever theft, and this is where the justice system favours the criminal, really. So I sort of talk about the POCA, Criminal Justice Act issue, because it happened back in the 90s. Criminal Justice Act, old legislation was used. That has favoured him, because if we used modern legislation, be POCA, we'd be taking all the money from that book. The sentencing, theft used to be a maximum sentence of 10 years in 93. Now it's 7. So they said, we'll use the modern sentencing guidelines, which favour him. Right? See my point? That it favours him to use the old legislation from a financial side. It favours him to use the new legislation from a sentencing side. So the maximum he could have got is 7 years, because that's the maximum you could get. And because he pleaded guilty, there was a reduction in that, so it went to 5 years. I don't think, you know, that, and I can send you a link to the judge's summing up, which is online. Breach of trust is a big gravity factor. Clearly it was a breach of trust. Amount is a big gravity factor, and it talks about £40,000, £50,000, anything, you know, that's a big amount. Well, this was clearly much bigger than that. So the judge was saying this is at the upper limit of, it's clearly a breach of trust and it's clearly a high limit. Even if you only got £200,000, that's still more than £40,000 or £50,000. But because he pleaded guilty, there's a reduction given for that. So it was 5 years.
He only ended up serving half of it as well.
Yeah, which is normal.
Yeah. So So he got two and a half years.
2.5 years, 2.5 years on licence, which is normal. Any court case is halved instantly. The only advantage was that there's talk about whether the time served in America should be reduced off his sentence, and I said to the judge, well, he would have got custodial for that in America, so it counted in America, it didn't count here, so they didn't reduce it. So it was like 6 months. Did he get a 6 month reduction for what he'd already served in America? And the judge said, no, you're not getting a reduction. That was the only little bonus we had, really.
Yeah. Did he end up doing any extra time in America then, or?
Well, when he was detained, he was put in prison in America.
Yeah. Did he go there after he'd been sentenced here?
Yeah, no.
Or he just stayed here?
No, because the Americans said he wasn't extradited from America or deported. He was just sent back here with his consent. But we had to give the Americans an agreement that we would deal with him. So literally, we'd met him off the plane at Luton. I think it says Heathrow in media, but it was Luton. Arrested him and charged him. So he kind of left America voluntarily because he thought, I'm going to get banged up for like 20 years for being an illegal immigrant and possession of firearms. So he took the easy option there. But yeah, that's it. America's sort of done and dusted from a criminal point of view. There's nothing waiting there for him that I know.
So I remember, sorry, my hands got pins and needles. I remember reading that he liked America, him and Debbie, like from New Hampshire. They went on holiday there in 1989, so I didn't know whether they'd wanted to return there at some point, or.
I mean, he's indicated that he'll go back there. But yeah, whether he will or not, who knows? Whether he'll be allowed to, I don't know.
If he went back there, do you think they'd try and press additional charges?
I don't think so. I will tell you a little something that was never in the media though, that's quite interesting. When we went to 1345 Leslie Circle, I've been in the house, I've talked to people who live in it now, and I left them my business card and said, if you ever got questions or whatever, just get in touch. It turns out, the next day, she sent me an email. So this is the second day we were in America. She sent me an email, but I didn't get it because I was in America. As soon as I got back to England, I switched my BlackBerry on and all my emails come up. She'd sent me an email, and what she said was that when they moved in, they hadn't lived there that long, so they only lived there a few years. They'd got a cellar, for want of a better term, what they call it, underground room, if you like. And they did it up, they redecorated, and they took all the plaster down on all the walls to completely redo it. And in the wall was a box with a key in it that had been completely plastered in and completely concealed. And that key was for a security deposit box in Colorado Springs. And they'd lost it. And they'd sort of thought they didn't really think much of it. They just thought that's a bit strange. And so I said, well, could you try and find that? If I'd have known about that when we were there, we'd have gone and tried to find it. Because what I think they've done, and this is and he's never been asked about this, because it's irrelevant. What I think they've done is probably put some cash in a deposit box and hid the key and plastered it into the wall in the event that if it all went wrong, if it all ran out or whatever, they could just cut a hole in the wall, get the key and go and get
it's sort of like
a little slush fund.
Backup.
So of course they moved on from there, and they maybe forgot about that key. I don't know. Maybe there's who plasters keys into walls. It's dodgy, isn't it? So I think if I ever did have the opportunity to talk to him, I would say to him that we know about the key. So there's a bit of interest in it.
Yeah.
So you've got an exclusive there.
That's really interesting.
But I'd obviously sent that back to Woodland Park Police and said, can you see if they can find that key or do some digging. But there's loads of safety deposit firms. It's quite a common thing. again, it didn't matter to us really, and it would be a big task to try and find that. You'd have to go and data protection, and if you got any boxes in the name of Stephen King, open them up, see what's in it. It's just, or was it in the name of Stephen King? Who knows?
Yeah,
but an interesting little twist that actually some spare cash, probably some spare cash.
You probably would have to get it out of Eddie Maher himself.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know. Let's say there's £10,000 there. I don't know. Is that worth travelling back to America and committing a burglary? Because he might think, if you came home to your house when my house has been burgled and somebody's cut a little hole in my wall, how weird. You wouldn't ever know what it was about, would you? But it's a long way to go, isn't it? So I'd love to say to him, don't bother going, because the key's not there anymore. But yeah, there you go.
I don't, obviously, because if you wanted to find out where it is, you'd have to ask him, but he's not exactly a reliable source, is he?
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah.
Maybe those people found that key and went and got it themselves. Yeah. Who knows? It's not. It's none of my business because it's in America, But it's just an interesting little twist to the.
Yeah, it would have been nice to know how much was in there, or if anything was in there.
Who knows?
Because it could have.
It's got to be something of valuable, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got to be something of value.
Yeah. Maybe it could have helped him from going bankrupt, to be honest.
But doesn't it just show you the way they must have lived? Because if they thought, if we get caught and they search the house, they'll never find that. Who knows? It might not even have been him. It might have been the people who had it before the house. But I suspect it probably was them.
Yeah, probably. It's not incredibly likely. That
No.
Other people did that, but who knows? The next one. In an interview with the Ipswich Star in February 2015, you state that your inquiries are continuing on finding out how Eddie Maher got out of the UK. Do you know now how Maher got out of the UK, or is it still unknown?
It's not ongoing. And I think part of that was because we were sort of asked. I'm very, very content that he went out of the country with the false passport in the name of Stephen King and went through security. Part of what his story is. Yes, he's got that picture with big glasses, to sort of cover him up and a bit of stubble. I'm content that's how he went out of the country. He's got a passport, he's got a ticket. But on that note, when Debbie said she's completely innocent in this, let's just spell out the timeline here. So a couple of days before the job, her and Lee flew out to America. They only booked tickets, just 2 tickets, not his ticket, just 2 tickets. And I know he said, he was going to get a last minute flight, it'll be cheaper. Fact is, they booked 2 tickets for a 2-week holiday, so the return tickets. He didn't go out to America for a month. I know that. He didn't go out for a month. They didn't come back after 2 weeks. So what was she told? She knew.
Yeah, she probably could have read about it.
Of course she knew. Of course she knew.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I was wondering, because she said that apparently, she was joined by Maher in Boston, but but did he leave in February? So that's...
No, he had to grow a beard, get a passport. It was a month. And she didn't come back. Why didn't she come back? I've gone away for 2 weeks. I'm expecting him after 3 days. He hasn't gone. I'm in America with a child.
It's a bit...
Draw your own conclusions, but to me, it stinks. And we arrested her and we interviewed her anyway. And, she didn't talk to us. And part of the tactic was to just interview lots of people and eventually maybe plead guilty as well.
Yeah, I think she was... the impression I got from the book is she's quite enamoured with Eddie, and probably still is.
Yeah.
She's quite committed.
Yeah,
to
they've stuck
helping.
together, and they had their other son, Mark, in America. You know, that's the other. It's just a mess. You know, what is his name? What is his surname? What is his citizenship? What is his nationality? You know, it's a bit strange, really, isn't it?
Yeah, he's the only proper American from that family because he was the only one born there.
Yeah.
But he was born there under illegal circumstances, so
Exactly.
it's a bit messy.
Mm.
And it was interesting. He was born in 1997, so he's a bit older than me. And that was a few months before you joined the police?
Yeah.
September 1997.
Yeah.
But which police did you join at that time? Was it the Suffolk police?
Yeah, no, joined Suffolk in 97, yeah.
So, I don't know if you'd read any articles talking about the case.
So, no, it was never heard of it. Never heard of it. So,
Because that year there was, I can't remember who wrote it, but there was a speculative article talking about how they thought May had probably run out of money by that time.
yeah. I think, it got interest, didn't it? And then at like the 10-year point it got interest, and Colin Adwent's quite a, you know, devoted reporter, isn't he? And you know, sort of it's on their radar and it's news, isn't it? So, yeah, interesting.
So I don't. What I get from you is that you don't regularly keep up with like media and that sort of thing.
Well, I do now.
Well, yeah, obviously
But
now.
I didn't back then. I wasn't interested then.
Obviously now it relates to your job, so you
Yeah.
sort of have to.
Yeah. I heavily read the media. Yeah. Angry and Look East. I record every night and watch it. Sad, isn't it? But I do.
Oh, my parents watch ITV Anglia, so.
Yeah.
There's a few more questions here. Do you agree with the sentence given to Maher, 5 years of which he only served half, or do you wish he was given more of a punishment?
The law is the law in this country. The sentencing is the sentencing. I don't particularly agree at all, in fact, with sentencing in this country. But it's something as a cop you just learn to live with. You know, the fact that everyone knows sentences are automatically halved. You know, all the judges know that whatever they're dishing out is halved. So you think, why don't you just give them more? But they have guidelines to approach, you know. And if you think about it, the law and the justice system has chipped away at sentencing over the years. So what you typically get is, you know, like, you know, say theft, it's 7 years. What are the guidelines? The guidelines have been drawn up because somebody at some point was given 7 years and somebody argued that it was a bit harsh and perhaps it should be 6 years. And then the next solicitors and barristers come along and refer you to the earlier case where somebody got 6 years, and so you shouldn't be given 7, you should follow that, or even a bit less because the victim was not so injured or something. 5.5 years. So gradually over the last probably 30 years, 40 years, people trying their luck in court and winning the argument has meant that sentences are gradually chipped away at, which is why you get such weenie sentences now. So, do I agree with it? I disagree with the fact that it was done under new legislation, because I think, well, actually, if you're doing the old legislation for the financial side of it, let's do the old legislation for the sentencing. But the fact of the matter is the law is the law. Should it have been 7 years? Well, what else do you have to steal to get 7 years then? See what I mean? Not only was it a breach of trust, it was a big load of money. Big load of money today, let alone 20 years ago. What else do you have to do to get a maximum sentence? So the only thing you can possibly do is to give credit and a reduction for a guilty plea. And the judges are insistent they will always do that, because otherwise no one would ever plead guilty. And I've spoken to judges personally about that, and that's what they say. If we don't give a reduction for a guilty plea, why would anyone ever plead guilty? Because they'd just try their luck, wouldn't they? Because they're trying to convince a jury to find them not guilty. So if you say, well, you're going to get 7 years if you plead guilty, you're going to get 7 years if you plead not guilty, but you also might get no years if you plead not guilty, you'd chance it every time. And of course, if you chance it every time, there's public money being spent on trials. And so in answer to your question, when the judge has said the starting point is 6 years, I disagree with that. I think the starting point should have been 7, was a reduction for a guilty plea. So I think he should have been given 6 years.
Yeah.
But when it's only half to 3, it's only 6 months difference, isn't it? So, yeah, didn't really make a lot of difference. But I more disagree with the financial approach, actually, because that's a good weapon in our armoury now, that we can seize his assets. You know, write a book, star in a film, win the lottery, we could seize all that. We can't do that now. That's what I more disagree with.
Yeah, I think that would probably be more of a convincing argument to people that were thinking of doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That they'd get the money taken away. Because it's like only a few years in prison versus taking all of your money away from you.
Yeah.
So.
And now you'd get both. Now you'd get the time in prison and you'd get the Proceeds of Crime Act award. So quite often when you see in the media, like, the person had a POCA hearing and was made to pay £1, right? Most people think, well, they only got to pay £1. So if that was him now, he's got no assets. They have to make an award of something. They'll generally say, you must have £1 in your pocket, sort of thing. So there's an award of £1, and then a value is put on. So they'd say £250,000 is the fee. So until we recover £250,000 from you, you'll always have this POCA hearing over your head. That's sort of how it works. So you get £500 in the bank, we have it off you. You have a house, have it off you.
They take everything
until that's paid.
So they can't really sustain themselves on their own.
Exactly.
They'd have to get support from somewhere else. That's interesting.
Yeah. So that would be better. That'd be better, because he probably wouldn't have bothered writing his book, would he? Because he wouldn't. Any money he makes, we'd have off him. But there you go.
Now he can make money off it and not get it taken.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And in fact, we'd have his pension every month. We'd take £600 pension. We'd do that every month under POCA, but we can't now. So yeah.
Did you not take any of his pension?
We took the lump sum that had accumulated. We had that off him completely. Well, he never got it. It was with the fire service.
Yeah, I read that partial part of it got given to G4S and part of it got given to like Equitas.
Yeah, the insurance. Yeah,
Equitas.
Yeah. So yeah, that pot of money, literally his monthly payments that had been accumulating in the bank, in the fire service bank. We said, right, don't give it to him. We go to court. Had an argument in court. We won, and the money was then not given to us. It was just not given to him. Then there was an argument as to who should get what, and then that was given. And then I think Jessica got given 15 grand or something, didn't she? So
yeah, like 10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, small victory, so you can get.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, she's got something.
Oh, it's getting hot again.
We might. Have you got any more? Because we've got a.
Yeah, there's 2 more questions.
Go on then.
Eddie Maher claims that he was forced to commit the theft by 3 criminals in his new book coming out. Oh, you already discussed this, but do you believe it? Obviously not.
No, not least because he admitted that wasn't the case previously. So no, he wasn't. You know, and then is it like Scarface and Ratty? He's come up with it, you know, and you just think, oh yeah, there's something. It's a joke, isn't it? Really, you know exactly who they are because they're named in the book. You know, we've got pictures online of, you know, it's just, you know, the names that are in the book you can look at online and on Facebook and go, yeah, that's the. You know, he's never said, oh yeah, that's the man who forced me into it. He could do that now, couldn't he? He could make a complaint now. He says he lived in fear. Well, he's not living in fear now, is he? He's put himself in the public domain. He's obviously not that scared, is he? And he's not scared because he knows they're all his mates. But there we go.
And finally, if you could speak to anyone who is planning on committing a heist, a robbery, or a theft, what would you say to them? A bit of a weird question, I know.
Don't know. Don't bother.
Yeah.
Get a job. Don't know really. It's just don't bother.
Yeah, it's a lot different punishing system now than it was 20 years ago. Obviously, it was a lot. Well, it wasn't exactly easy, but it was easier to do it than it is now, considering the internet and everything.
Yeah. I would never condone crime. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
I think there's, the cash in transit robberies. Nationally, there's still a problem, isn't there? But the actual robberies, as in using force, smashing into a van, holding people at gunpoint. People get shot and killed. Particularly if there's armed surveillance on some criminals, and that I've seen videos of people getting shot and killed, as in the offenders, the criminals. It's risky business. This was different because it was internally, but you're going to get caught, aren't you? The world just really, to disappear in the world is actually harder now, I think.
Yeah, especially with, like I said, the internet, it makes it a lot harder to be anonymous. Because it's so fast to get information from one side of the world to the other.
Yeah, and facial recognition is coming. Like my little point and shoot camera, you can program to recognise faces. So you can program, like, if it picks up my wife, it'll say wife. That.
God.
That probably does it. Your camera probably does it.
Yeah, probably.
So if you think about that, if you think about cameras that pick out faces, don't they, and make them focused.
Yeah, like my iPhone can do it as well. Like when you're using camera, it recognises.
So what my camera does is you can program it so it will recognise people's face, my family's face. And if you put that up to government level and just say, right, we've got a face, put it into facial recognition across CCTV across the world, at some point someone's going to get captured and go, that's the person. That's coming. That is coming. So disappearing into the world, never getting caught on a camera anywhere, impossible.
Especially in the UK, because it's like one of the, I swear it's like the biggest CCTV, the most amount of CCTV in the world, in this country.
Yeah.
So it would probably make it harder for someone like a new person pretending, or even if they got away with it, trying to hide out like Maher did.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Do you know where he hid during the time after the crime, or is that not something you're looking into?
No, it's not something I could comment on.
Well, we just know that he was in the country. I'm guessing he was somewhere nearby, but
yeah, London. There you go.
Yeah, London.
Yeah. There you go.